That's how it's gonna be, a little test tube.
It's most likely to be a highly infectious virus.
Guy steps out of Times Square station. Smashes it on the side.
Welcome to the Zero Indent Review, a show dedicated to handcrafted studies of genre fiction. I'm author DC McNeil, and I'm joined, as always, by Patrick Laverne, a local socialite, drinking too much, waiting for the world to end.
Well, you know, may as well get through all the grog before the world ends.
It's true.
It's the responsible thing to do.
It's actually a very mature thing to do, I think. You know.
Mm-hmm.
And as always, J.M. Anderson, an American stranded in Australia during a global war.
You know what? If I could get over there,
There are far worse
I
places
might
to be.
prefer that. Yep.
Probably, yeah, one of the safest places to be at the moment. Speaking of, welcome back to our continued study of the post-apocalypse genre, brought to you by the Zero Indent Patreon subscribers who help make the shows and articles that shape Zero Indent. Today we are talking about 1957's novel On the Beach, a story about a global war in Europe that causes a fuel crisis in Australia. Huh. That's interesting. What a...
What a crazy concept.
What an outlandish idea.
So, how long ago did you pick this book?
Like,
how far ahead into the future were you seeing?
I picked this in November, and I did that because I kind of got the impression that, like, because Israel basically were like, oh, this is what we want to do in, like, the next 4 years. And I was like, maybe this book will be contemporary and important. Yeah. So not that far ahead. I don't want to, like, take any credit where I'm not due, but I did kind of go, this will be right. Because one of the things about this book that is, like, really interesting is it does a lot of thinking of, like, the logistics of what would happen in a way that we don't often see. And this is also part of the fact that, like, of when it's written, like, right, this is pre the 80s and, like, the big, like, science fiction, science fantasy boom, right? This is still very much written in the style of, like, it's almost like a contemporary biography that's fictional or something. Like, there's a quality to it that feels very unique.
It kind of reminds me a bit of Jules Verne.
Yeah.
Like, just the very, like, play-by-play nature of, like, yeah, so sort of like a banal story. But with an interesting, like, premise.
Yes, that's exactly right. Yeah, it's very and that's part of what the book is doing, right? Is it's thinking about, like, well, what would your life become in this situation, and how would you process it? And the answer for some of these characters is they don't. I guess I want to go to you first, Pat, because you were the most naive reader in the sense that I don't think you knew anything going into this except that it was part of this unit. What did you think?
You started off calling him promiscuous, and now you're calling him naive. I just want to point that out.
I did not call him promiscuous. You drew that conclusion all on your own. And that says something about you more than it does about me, I think.
Wait, what was implied about you saying I was promiscuous?
He's assuming that because I said you were drinking too much, that you were the girl that's doing a bit of sleeping around.
True. Yeah, right. My thoughts went to that old guy they met at the bar.
Yeah, because you're not, because your mind isn't filthy like JM's.
All right. My general thoughts. Yeah, the story about nuclear Armageddon hit a bit too close to home with this one. It kindled some growing paranoia that I have, some genuine paranoia that I have, and I'm sure that a lot of people have right now. It was very Australian. It was strange seeing my neck of the woods being featured so prominently in this novel.
The number of times Cairns came up, I was like, Pat is going to be freaking out. He's going to have, like, a paranoid daydream.
They surface in Cairns and they look, and from the way he was describing the what he was seeing, I was like, this ain't. I was literally imagining the exact point where he would be. I was like, I don't know. But also, this was set in the 60s. I was mindful of that. I was like, things are probably different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, yes, like just in the, I don't know, everything about this book is very Australian. I kept, reading it in an Australian accent in my mind, which I don't normally do. The way that the people are at once very practical about their impending doom, but also like very willfully delusional. It's like, man, I can so tangibly like imagine that. And yeah, I was. It's so interesting comparing it to The Road because, like, despite how stark and grey, like the actual setting of The Road is, that book is very lurid in terms of, like the horrors of the story and stuff like that. Whereas contrasted with this novel, like On the Beach has this very reserved dignity about it. It's melancholic, but it's not sappy. It's it's at times comedic, but it's not shallow or flippant. It just feels very real and grounded, and yeah, as a result, it kind of uncomfortably real, which is this book doing its job. So yeah, I'm pretty invested in it. I think so far it's a great book, and yeah, needless to say, very prescient as well.
Yeah, I had not initially planned for it to be as relevant as it is, but yeah, to your point, like, The Road feels like this constant hallucination of this other, like, second world. This feels like kind of uncomfortably, it's realistic enough to some stuff that's happening now that, like, there were points where I did have to set the book down and just be like, I need to not read this for a second, in a way where The Road, I was like, oh, like, this is a completely different world. But, like, especially because it's like places, there's at one point where they go to a hotel and I've literally been there for a pint. And I had this, like, really uncomfortable moment of, like, oh, like, especially the opening of this book where he's describing how they all get around now. And I was thinking back to, like, 2 weeks ago when I jokingly said on the podcast, like, oh yeah, like, I guess I'm not driving my car anymore. Like, yeah, that is what's happening. And so, yeah, to your point, Pat, some of this is a little too close to home in ways that I'm still not yet processing. And I'm choosing to not process. Yeah. Yeah. JM, high level?
I had a whole lot of those same thoughts. I don't remember where it was that I was also like, I kind of want to put this book down right now. And a lot of the descriptions that Pat had, I was seeing as a reflection of the age in which the book was written. So the tone of the book, it just reminds me so much of like my grandparents before they got super old, when they were still kind of like young-ish, and the stoicism and I don't know, all of this stuff. I want to see this done modern, if that makes any sense, because like the entire story only comes off the way it does because of the period in which it was written, which maybe is like a no duh kind of statement, but so much of what makes this interesting is only because it was written in 57 or whatever, right?
That I think I completely disagree with that. That's so interesting. I think it just feels indelibly Australian. I don't know, like the like stoic kind of jokey kind of style of conversation in this that like snaps into like absolute austerity and like sincerity. That's life here. I don't know.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean that's still alive when you go to visit your parents or your grandparents or something. Like they act like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. And maybe this is part of the Queenslander thing, maybe specifically, as opposed to like Australia in general, and probably Perth as well, because Perth is like 15 years behind the rest of the country, but like, you know, culturally at least. But there is something about this that made me go, oh yeah, like the people in this book are people that I overhear like at the pub, you know, when I'm watching the football or the F1 or whatever. And it's like, this is just a type of person that still exists in Queensland. I don't know. And this is just going to be a culturation thing, right? Like, You just don't have access to that JM, and so like that makes complete sense. Whereas some of this for us is still kind of contemporary, stylistically to the way some people where we live actually behave, which is really interesting.
I didn't want to say who, but like one of the characters in this book is just like exactly one of my family members, like their personality.
Damn. Yeah. There's someone in this book where I went, oh yeah, that's so and so that I know. Not in a bad way, just in a way where I was like, oh yeah, that's absolutely how she would behave. Yeah. Interesting. Okay, well, I guess this will be a really fascinating discussion then. This is the rare case where we have the upper hand on JM because it's set in our backyard.
What do you mean rare? You always have the upper hand on me.
Well, culturally. Because you're always like, oh, you're always saying some crazy shit about America. We get to say some crazy shit about Queensland. You know? That's unusual. All right, Pat, when you are ready. So today we are reading, I didn't say this at the start, chapters 1 through 4 of On the Beach. So in the print version, which is probably the only version that is circulating, I think is like the... I can't remember what it's called, but it's the... now I don't have it in front of me. But yeah, the print version, it's up to page 110. But as I said, if you are reading along on this one, this book is old enough that you probably can just find a free version online or an EPUB. See, this is what... You keep finding the weirdest versions of these books.
I don't know.
America.
It's print and it's a version. What do you want?
So... This is like the one that most people... You'll find this in most bookshops, I guess, in Europe and Australia, which is the vintage Shute version.
I mean, I tried. I went to a couple of bookshops and nowhere had it, so I just ended up reading it on the EPUB.
Yeah, I despite having this, I did read it on the EPUB. To be fair, makes it's easier for this show. I can highlight stuff. I can scribble in the marginalia. It's great. Pat, when you're ready, can we please hear the summary for chapters 1 through 4 of On the Beach by Neil Shute?
On the beach outside Melbourne, the residents live in the aftermath of a nuclear war in Europe and the Petrol States. We follow Peter Holmes, an unemployed naval officer with a newborn baby and wife. He's called to Melbourne for a mysterious mission reporting to an American captain, Dwight Towers, aboard the Scorpion, a US submarine. Hold on. It's not the Scorpion, is it? That's the other one.
Wait. No, this is the Scorpion, right?
Is it? Oh.
The other one's... Oh, man, you've already got me second guessing.
I
I
want to side with Pat here.
Yeah, I think the Scorpion's the one that was at Rio de Janeiro.
I don't know about that. I feel like that one had like that's like an S, like the Sidewinder or something like that. I can't remember.
All right, well, we just skipped it.
It actually doesn't matter at all.
We just want to find you in a mistake. That's literally it.
Yeah, like this energy that's been developing the last like 2 months of like we need to find any chink in the armor. I feel like I don't appreciate.
He's called to Melbourne for a mysterious mission reporting to an American captain, Dwight Towers, aboard the Scorpion, a US submarine. Peter agrees to the mission despite the fact that it will take the better part of 9 months. Peter invites the American for the weekend. They discuss various plans to keep the Yank occupied and settle on throwing a party with their friend Moira, who will keep the American busy. Peter and Moira meet Dwight at the train, and Dwight and Moira go for a drink at the Pier Hotel, which is a hotel you can visit to this day in Coffs Harbour.
Can't confirm. Had
Dwight
a beer
and
there
Moira-
last year. Still a real place.
Dwight and Moira participate in the sailing club race, but end up capsizing. Moira does this on purpose, and during the incident contrives for her bra to come off, never a dull moment. A week later, Marion visits Dwight in Sydney, and we have a glimpse of life now. The world is slowly ticking down. Offices are closed. Decisions about what to do with the year left are made over a double brandy and dreadful Australian whiskey. Dwight and Peter travel aboard the Scorpion submarine to Cairns and Darwin and conclude that everyone there is dead. Back at shore 2 weeks later, Moira convinces Peter to invite Dwight for the weekend. The two appear to be hitting it off, so much so Moira invites Dwight to her family's farm for a few nights. Back on base, Dwight and Peter learn of their next assignment: to travel to the uninhabitable Seattle to investigate a mysterious radio broadcast. Peter realizes he may not be home by June in time for the radiation to arrive, so he visits the pharmacist who explains how the state-based euthanasia will work. That's all we read for today.
I picked this stopping point specifically because it was the point. Now, I told a lie last week. I got a memory wrong last week, which was this was not the first book that I finished and went, I need to reread this. This was the first book, and I realized this in retrospect. This was the first book I finished and went, I never want to read this ever again. Not in a bad way, just in like a I'm good type of way. I picked the stopping point in retrospect because this was the moment when I was reading this during uni where I went, oh, this isn't a mode of book I haven't encountered before. Right? Like the practical way in which they have this conversation about the euthanasia, and then he goes, oh, like, what about those that can't, like, take pills or whatever? That was, like, the first moment for me, I think, as a reader where the first time I read this, I went, oh, this is not the thing I thought it was. Like, this is a different kind of book. And not the first euthanasia we've encountered recently. For our Christmas special last year, we covered a very similar concept. Go listen to that if you haven't. It's one of my favorite episodes. Yeah, I'm curious, Pat. One of the kind of the mysteries this book does a good job of revealing, if you don't read the Dust Jacket, is what all is happening. Was there do you remember the point in the book where you kind of put together, obviously you know it's the post-apocalypse unit, but was there a point in the book where you put together like what all was going on at a macro level?
I can't remember. I feel like it reveals its hand pretty early on, doesn't it? I honestly can't remember.
Not specifically the fact that they're on a ticking clock. Like you learn about the war and stuff pretty early, but the impending end of the world is not centered very clearly. I don't think. I could be wrong about that.
There were like hints at like a impending timeline.
Yeah, but no one says it
without specifically saying what it was, but it was like something is coming.
Yeah. I also adore the opening of this book. It's so it's so Australia. Lieutenant Commander Peter Holmes of the Royal Australian Navy, which is the RAN as opposed to the RAF, which is the Air Force. Royal Australian Navy woke soon after dawn. He lay drowsily for a while, lulled by the warm comfort of Mary sleeping beside him, watching for the first light of the Australian sun upon the cretonne curtains of their room. He knew from the sun's rays that it was about 5 o'clock. Very soon the light would wake up his baby daughter, Jennifer, in her cot, and then they would have to get up and start doing things. No need to start before that happened. He could lie a little longer. He woke happy, and it was some time before his conscious senses realized and pinned down the origin of this happiness. It was not Christmas because that was over. He'd illuminated the little fir tree in their garden with a string of colored lights, with a long lead to the plug beside the fireplace in the lounge, a small replica of the great illuminated tree a mile away, outside the town hall of Falmouth. They had a barbecue in the garden on the evening of Christmas Day with a few friends. Christmas was over, and his mind turned over slowly. This must be Thursday the 27th. As he lay in bed, the sunburn on his back was still a little sore from their day on the beach yesterday, and from sailing in the race. And it really feels like when I do contemporary writing, which I don't do often, this is kind of how I write about this process of like thinking time and waking up. Like this opening feels very modern to me in a way that I can't quite articulate. Like the distance between this prose style and how contemporary writers write about like life feels very similar. It's interesting. It's very unchanged stylistically from how we see that represented now, I feel.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me of like, I don't know, films set in the American like desert places, like I don't know, like Paris, Texas, or No Country for Old Men.
Mm-hmm.
There's always like an emphasis on like morning routines and stuff like that, you know, like just the what do you do on a quiet morning
Yeah, exactly.
That kind of stuff.
Although-
Also, to your previous question as well, like when does it sort of become clear? I reckon like it's when Peter and Mary are talking about inviting the captain over, and then Mary goes, "Oh, Peter, he won't be. They're never all right. It's much too painful them coming into people's homes and stuff like that." I feel like that's probably maybe the first like, very unclear thing that's like meant to, clue you into the state of the world.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love the where he talks about like they had a small car, but like they like the short war had ended a year previously, it remained unused. And I went, huh. And it's like both he and Mary had bicycles. The chief trouble was the long hill up from Falmouth. And this was really early on, like this is page 2 or something. That was where I started to get that uncomfortable, like, these are some of the conversations we're having now. Of like, yeah, I guess I'm not going to use my car for like the next, and we thankfully where we live, we've had some subsidies, so you can still kind of afford fuel. But like, that is a short runway from where we are currently to, okay, I guess we're all like buying bikes and, using public transport all the time. Yeah, it's not hard to imagine how quickly we would get there. Yeah, but I think I've written in my marginalia on like page 4 or 5, oil is just straight up gone. This happens so quickly, and the description is very, very similar to what's happening now. Where he goes, before it dawned upon Australians that all oil came from the Northern Hemisphere, and I went, fuck. That is how that works. And like the statecraft is a thing that this thinks about a lot. I guess we'll talk a little bit about like the American and that kind of stuff. But the setup here is that so Peter's our kind of, I guess Peter's our protagonist insofar as there is one.
I kind of think Dwight becomes more of a protagonist.
Yeah, it's kind of like 50-50, I feel. Like we kind of move between them.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Dwight's the American. How does he end up in Australia? They basically like they happen to be nearby on a mission or something when all the nukes go off, right?
Yeah.
I super don't remember.
I seem to think he was like on a battleship that was somehow relatively close.
I feel like it was a submarine.
I can't remember
right?
either.
I could be right. 3 guys trying to remember a book they just read. But that's what we should rename this podcast to. But no, regardless, there's this kind of one of the things this book thinks very interestingly is the collapse in like reportage and reporting lines and statecraft, and the ways in which like when these things happen, they happen very quickly, and you always end up with like really junior people ending up being the decision makers, and it just kind of accelerates things going wrong. And yes, if for whatever reason, this American has ended up with his submarine in Sydney, and the thing that makes a submarine useful in a nuclear apocalypse is that radiation doesn't penetrate. Well, water is a very good insulator, first of all, and radiation doesn't penetrate water at the same rate it does other types of particles, and so you can kind of get within certain ranges of radiated things without like the vessel itself becoming radiated. And obviously back then, they had like lead hulls and stuff. They were very, very good insulators against nuclear attack. That's why the Cold War is full of submarines, right? Because that nuclear threat means that you have to focus on your submarine game, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
Normal stuff. Really made me go, huh? I mean, we need healthcare and stuff. Maybe those submarines were a good investment.
I kept thinking about how much it smells inside a submarine during this whole thing. Yeah, apparently it fucking stinks.
Yeah, he was like, oh,
they talk about the They talk about the air filtration system, and I think he said it was like about an hour for all of the air to get filtered out. They were
Yeah,
talking
but
about cooking cabbage.
of like particles and stuff. But apparently, like, yeah, it apparently it smells really bad though, is what I've heard.
Yeah, you can't. That's like an imperfect, and you're filtering the air. It's like if we'd solved that problem, long haul flights would not smell terrible, but they do. You know what I mean? Like that would be a solved problem for us as people. Okay. Dwight's the American. He's in charge of the submarine, and Peter is basically an unemployed naval officer because there's no navy anymore, because there's no enemies anymore, because everyone is dead. And they offer him this assignment that in totality is about 9 months. It's kind of broken up into different cruises, which, fun fact, is still the term they use for that, which I didn't know. And the thing that I think is interesting, the first thing that I've circled on my notes is like, JM hates this, which is now a thing I think about, is why does he say yes to this job? Because logically, the hand went up. Because logically, and this, I was doing my like, what would JM be thinking? Logically, he should want to maximize the total amount of time he can spend with his family, right? And so doing this is an illogical decision. Was that why you didn't like this, JM? Or did you like it? I'm curious.
Well, no, that's what I was talking about. Is to me the entire book is only makes sense because of the age it was written. Because like this decision, I feel like is something that my granddad would have done and his generation would have done, because like they have to work and they are not family people. Like he was not helping raise the kids. That was the wife's job. In the book, he never touches his daughter, right? Like this character in this book would never make the decision to spend more time with his family, even if the world is ending, because that's what the world was like back then. If this was made now, 0 of my friends would stay at their job. They would all be home with their families taking care of their baby girl. So that's part of the reason I was saying I would love to see this book rewritten in the modern age, because like everything that happens in it is predicated on it happening in that age. Even like the way that they interact with Moira and the wife, like so many of the social interactions are all like women are kind of lesser beings at that time. They don't have the same rights and this kind of stuff, and they're not treated the same way. I mean, the dude might have a disease that would kill his infant daughter, and he comes home anyway and makes the daughter sleep outside on the porch.
At one point they go,
it makes sense for that day and age, but not, you know.
At one point he goes, they get measles. There's measles on the submarine. And you're reading the book and he's like, yeah, I'm in like kind of a quarantine. A, he doesn't quarantine at all. B, he invites Dwight down on the train, who also could have measles. And C, he goes into town and then goes out to lunch. Brother. That is not quarantine. But I do want to put some tension on that idea, though. Because I think one of the interesting questions this book thinks about is the way that, even though work is heavily gendered at the time, as you say, there's a conversation that Moira and Dwight have about the fact that Moira was desperate to find work, not because she needs money, but because it's something to do. And I think that part of what this book is trying to think is like the centralizing question of this book is, what do you do with this 9 months that you have left? Potentially 6, right? Depending on how the winds go. And one of the things that Moira is constantly complaining about, she's like, well, at least you have something to do. Like, it's better than just waiting and constantly having to find something to do. You know, like there's a like, yes, I acknowledge all of that gender stuff is there, and the fact that it's set when it's set is there. But also, I think if you kind of put pressure on the ideas that it's presenting beyond gender, and you kind of take them as a little bit ahistoric in a way that that we sometimes do, I do think there is a bigger, interesting question there about like I think this is a book about like the meaning of life. If you get through some of that stuff.
I don't disagree. I'm just saying that the meaning of life is 1957 life, which is drastically different than the meaning of life in 2026. So all of the stuff that, you know, they care about or they struggle with and all that is just so different from now that it's like, I don't want to say like I'm not enjoying it or anything. It's just really difficult to put myself into this mindset of this period in which I did not live, which is influencing all of their decisions and their place in the world. Like she would not be struggling to start a YouTube channel today. To start a TikTok thing. Like she would be able to she would have so many more opportunities now. Like the entire reason that her character has the main struggle that she's trying to overcome throughout the whole thing is just the time period. Like it's not actually it's not the nuke. Like that's not the main theme, if that makes any sense. Like I'm seeing her as being crippled by the time, the era, not the impending death.
I mean, yeah, probably a bit of both. Like, yeah, she's expected to, you know, settle down, have kids, but also like listlessness is pretty universal. You know, it's like, also like the ambitions of Peter and Mary are just to, you know, like yeah, they have the gendered, you know, social norms of Mary being a full-time mother and Peter going off to work, but yeah, ultimately what they're doing is just you know, wanting to have a family. You know, that's ageless. But yeah, but I mean, like, you know, it's like the time period like certainly gives it a very, you know, it gives it a texture that is, yeah, still specific to that time and place for sure.
Yeah, it's putting pressure on things in the same way that I think something like Mad Men does with its gender politics, right? Where it's going, this stuff exists, but even when it does exist, there are still exceptions, and those exceptions still have to deal with the fact that, like, even if we solve this, there are still larger existential issues at hand. It's interesting. And maybe I just wasn't thinking about it because I've read this book before, but that stuff didn't really, like, the gender stuff is there. Like, I don't want to, like, you know, dismiss that at all, right? Like, that's a worthy conversation to be had. But I've always felt like this book is trying to write itself beneath that problem and go, okay, but even given that, like, Moira is such an interesting character. She serves like a social function in this book. One that I can't quite pin down fully. So for those who haven't read it, Moira is this, like, she's like 24, 22 maybe, I can't remember. And she goes to parties. She doesn't seem to have a job. And it kind of seems like she's like not entertainment for hire, but she serves this like social function, you know, in and around Coffs Harbour to, like, I don't know, man, like, people call her when they need their party spruced up or they have someone they need to entertain. Like, you know, Peter calls her because he's like, oh, like, him and Mary are like, oh, shit, like, we need to keep Dwight occupied so he doesn't think about his, you know, his dead wife and kid, or dead wife and kids, you know. She's not quite, like, to the level of being a sex worker, but she's not like, I don't know, it's a very interesting character that is very of the time, I think, to your point, JM. You know, you would see this character written as, you know, if you were going to rewrite this now, she would be like a paid sex worker, right? There wouldn't be this ambiguity about the social function here, I don't think.
Okay, I have to have to phrase this so carefully. Um, there is, because I don't think it's nearly that far as like paid sex worker, because there is a type of woman that her choice, she loves doing it, it's fine, all that. She goes out, she parties, she sleeps around. That's how she gets her kicks. That's what Moira was to me. Like the end of the world, kind of. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know how much that actually factors into it, because her main thing is like, I don't have a life. I don't have anything to do. So she does this other stuff. Um, but in modern age, there are these people that they are the life of the party, and you invite them so that they can be the life of the party and make your party be a good party. And so it seems like that is what she does. But there's a lot of references to the promiscuity, and that's just her trying to find meaning somewhere. And it's the different vices that she's picking up. Um, but it does not seem as detrimental as an actual addict, though, I think is the big difference. Like it's much more like she's abusing her body, but she's also living her best life as best she can. Um, but not in a like literally alcoholic, or sex addict kind of way, if that makes sense.
All right, here's my take on Moira. Like, in that time and place, what are young women expected to do? Like, just snag a man and start a family, right? Like, and if you don't, then you just keep waiting until you do, right? Like, that's just how it was. And what do you do in the meantime if you're Moira? I don't know. You just keep living life. Like, you keep up the appearance of being, fun and sociable, and you present yourself, well, and you keep yourself open to romantic matches and stuff like that. Like and you have friends like Mary, who set you up with Peter's friends and stuff like that. I kind of think that's just what it is, right? Like, and she's she's very young. Like, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I just kind of think she's not really like, I don't know about like this thing about her promiscuity as like a social function that other people use her for. I'm not quite so sure on that. I just think she's someone who probably, like likes, enjoys life and, likes to have sex sometimes and stuff like that. It might be a bit scandalous back in those times, but like, yeah, I kind of think that's just the kind of character she is. Yeah.
She does talk about how she had like wanted to take this, typewriting class, and how she couldn't be a secretary because she doesn't have time to finish the course. And generalization, but I think that was kind of the career path for a lot of women. Then was just you go and work the like quote unquote secretary type roles, where you're just like doing office work and until you find a husband and get married, and then you are then a stay at home mother from that point on. Yeah. That was another interesting thing about her literally not having, because she mentions specifically, I don't have enough time to take this class to learn to be a typist to get hired as a secretary, and also I don't have enough time for whoever she was talking to. I don't have time for you to get me pregnant so I could be a mother. Like, there's literally not time for me to achieve anything that society tells me that I'm supposed to be achieving.
Yeah, this book is full of people either not doing things because there's not enough time left, or delusionally doing things despite the fact that whatever that thing is won't materialize before the end of the world. Dwight lives in this self-conscious delusion that he's going to rotate back home in September, and he has this moment where he goes to church and he thinks through like, oh, I'm going to miss like my eldest daughter's birthday, so I got to think of like a really good gift to bring back. How tall is my youngest going to be? Oh, he'll have grown a lot. What will my wife be? Da-da-da. Like, he has all these like, kind of delusions, and he explains this at one point to Moira, and she very calmly is like, okay, sure, you're not nuts, like, I get it. at one point, you know, Peter and Mary are like planting their garden for like, and they're like, oh, we'll plant this vegetable garden so we have like vegetables like next summer. And it's like, they're not going to live to see next summer. And there's this great line of dialogue where, you know, Moira is saying this to Dwight inside. She's like, what are they do? Why are they planting their fucking garden? Like, it's such a waste of time. And he's like, look, it's something to do and it makes them feel normal. And I think that there's a maybe petulance is the wrong word, but there's a judgment or a judgmental thing that Moira has that is very much like, as a young person, where you're like, ugh, imagine caring about like property and apartments and like tending to your garden, and then as you get older, you start to be like, yeah, actually, kind of like fuck with gardens, and like, yeah, I do really care about like my furniture, and like, you know, you kind of begin to appreciate like a lot of the things in life that you know, like when I was younger, I was like, man, these people, man, that's a fucking waste of time. That's not real shit. Real shit is like art, man. You gotta like care about art, and then like you get a bit older and you start to like, you know, you appreciate a lot of the material things around you because they can bring you such, you know, grounding.
When I was a kid, I hated going to Bunnings, but now I'm like, oh yeah, Bunnings, fuck yeah,
fuck yeah, Bunnings, brother. Oh, give me a little
Bunnings.
sausage in a white bread. Oh, so good, so good. Bunnings is a hardware store, JM. And it's
yeah, and they serve sausages and white bread at the hardware store, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's always cooked by like some soccer mom, and it's like for a charity or whatever. You'll get a can of you get $1. You'll pay $1 for a can of like a Coke Zero or something while you're there.
You'll pay $2 actually, and the sausages are the cheapest, most processed like sausages you could buy in bulk. Yeah,
they come in like a 30-pack at Coles or whatever.
Yeah,
the tomato sauce is always in like a giant dispenser. It's a good time. And if you're lucky, you'll get some caramelized onion, but that's rare. He doesn't look convinced.
Well, Kohl's is a clothing store over here, so I was just trying to process that.
Kohl's is one of our grocery stores. Currently being done
it's
for
one of the big evil.
Yeah, being done for a class action.
The big evil corporations.
Yeah. One thing that happens a lot in this country, which doesn't in your country, Jam, is like a lot of our big, like, you know, national chains of different like stores and things like that are constantly in lawsuits because our government does this really funny thing that you guys aren't familiar with, where it actually sues companies for doing things that are wrong. And to be constantly in the news, it's always like, oh, Coles is being sued for that. JB Hi-Fi recently got done for something. I got like a retrospect.
I got a text about that.
You got a text about that? Yeah.
I'm part of the class action.
Hell yeah, brother. As am I. Not that I've ever paid for an extended warranty, but hey, that's fine.
Yeah, I must have been duped once back in the day.
I feel like I would have, because I never do it for things there. I'm like if it's, I probably did it for a laptop, you know, something really expensive at one point, I would think.
Yeah.
But anyway,
something like that.
That's just Australian thing. This whole book is just going to be us being like Australian fact. But yes, the I guess to circle back on like the this question of like, you know, timelines and the way that these people are living. I'm curious, like, did you guys ever have a point where any of the behavior strained credibility, or does it manage to kind of walk that line with how these characters behave, and is that mediated, or is that helped by the mediation of when it's set, I guess? Because that was kind of my feeling, was like there are moments where occasionally some of the conversations between Dwight and Moira, I was like, if this was written now, like Moira would chew the shit out of Dwight for some of the stuff he says to her, but instead she just kind of plays it off. Yeah, I'm curious how you guys felt about that.
Yeah, I mean, it did strike me how like sort of like cooperative and genial everyone is with each other. I feel like that's maybe something of the time, but who knows? Like that's always something like you know, you kind of romanticize, every generation romanticizes the past like that. But also, an apocalypse is happening. Maybe people do suddenly become quite cooperative during an apocalypse. Who knows? But anyway, nothing strained credibility really. I thought everything was believable enough.
I was torn between wondering if Australians really are just that different of a breed, or if this was, again, just this different age that the different era that I was noticing. Because, like, when all of the descriptions of the town and the people who live there, and everyone is so calm, and like there would be absolute riots everywhere. People would be robbing every store, hoarding everything. People would just be running around with it would be the purge. It would be the purge every single day. People just doing whatever they have always wanted to do, because now they know like the end is near. Like that's what today would happen. So when I'm reading this, it kept hitting me as being very unrealistic, but also I'm like, for the era, I think this makes sense, because I can see Granddad, like if he and I are watching the news and they're like, here comes the comet, we're about to die, he'd just go, well, this is it.
Yeah.
You know, and that'd be it. It's just like that generation was just like stoic, and they just would accept it, and they wouldn't be like, let's go looting. No, that's that's us.
This also might be a self-selection thing, but Australians are pretty chill. I feel, especially Queenslanders, they don't give a fuck, man.
That's why it's a double-edged sword though. If it means any sort of like public work takes 4 times as long to complete.
Correct.
It's a trade-off.
Yeah, they've been doing roadworks on my street this week, and this is part of why I didn't get any sleep last night. Because they've been doing it at like 2 or 3 a.m. And they hit the water main. So at like 3:30, you just hear this almighty like cracking sound. I'm like, that doesn't sound good. And yeah, like there's a bunch of trainees madly scrambling in this giant floodlight to try and then this big other truck comes in and it's got these big lights on, and literally I think they were working on it till like 7 a.m. At which point I was like, I'm gonna go lie down on the couch and try and get some sleep. But yes,
jeez.
Anyway, it's fine now, but it was very much like a okay. And they were supposed to be done with the roadworks 2 weeks ago. So yes,
yep.
Double-edged sword.
It checks out.
But I did think, as I was reading this, I was like, yeah, this is like the most Coffs Harbour thing ever. That's the other thing, is like one of the things about where this book is set is it's a very chill, like beachside town. I could see this being quite realistic. And also, yeah, like Australians are in general, like, especially Queensland is very kind of laid back and not fussed. And it would just be the scene where they're in Sydney and it's just like on a Saturday night, everybody's drunk, sleeping in the street, falling over. I'm like, yeah, that's now.
Mm-hmm.
That's today.
Yeah.
And the cultural, the other thing I really liked, and this is part of why I picked this book, is the cultural dynamic between Peter and Dwight. I find really fascinating, especially because over the last like however long it's been, God, is it 7-8 years, however long we've known JM, however long that's been, don't think about how long it's been. There's this kind of there's a way that this book tries to unpack the difference between the Australians and then this American, and you get it a lot through the dialogue of like the way that Dwight talks to Moira. There's multiple times where he calls her honey in a way that every time it happened, I wanted to crawl out of my skin, because I could hear it in that American accent.
I was gonna point that out earlier, because that doesn't start out that way, and it very slowly develops, and I'm thinking that he's just slowly replacing his wife with her, and that's coming across in his language. So I actually never read that as like, the an anti-feminist thing for as would be common in that day and age. I read it as him slowly developing actual like feelings for her. So he's actually starting to call her honey, picturing his wife. But that's not there in the first several chapters of him knowing her. It's developing.
I don't disagree with that. It's just something I can hear so clearly in my head in the American accent. Like, and it just reminds me of a type of person in a way that I was like, oh, this hit me like the generational thing you were talking about, JM, of like part of the thing that makes this book possible is when it's set. That was one of those lines of dialogue where I was like, oof, because I think that if this was set now, that would not be honey. That might be like darling or something. I don't know. Darling.
Bay.
Ugh. Yeah. I listened to two grown adults yesterday call each other baby in a way that I was like, at least babe has like an air of, I don't know. This is a hill I'm willing to die on, by the way. This is one of, can I tell you, I think about this a lot. All right. I'm not well right now, and I think about this all the time. And I need more sleep. One of the things that drives me fucking okay, where do you guys stand on the baby thing? Because I'm a big believer in that, like, I think babe is fine. I was a big babe is cringe, I'm never gonna say babe until I did. And then I was like I grew up and I was like, well, that's whatever. Baby is fucking weird to me. Calling someone babe, I don't know, man. Is that not the case?
No. Well, I have a lot of like healthy relationships as models, like in my family, and one of those, they call each other baby, so that's always been normal to me.
Huh. Interesting. Can I tell you that, as a child of 2 divorces, there's never been any pet names in my family. Everyone is first name. I don't know, man. It just bothers me. And I like literally listened to 2 people do it yesterday and I went, ugh.
Get a load of this curmudgeon over here.
Yeah, man.
Oh,
I don't know what to tell you. I'm a judgmental bitch. We all know this. Yeah,
I will stand up for you slightly because I've had that thought before. So you're definitely not alone.
Yeah. I realize it's nothing and it's not anything, but it's just something that bothers me. Now, probably my therapist, I know she doesn't listen to this show, but if she was, she'd be like, there's some trauma there. I don't want to think about that. But anyway, the cultural kind of divide is interesting. There's multiple times, and I couldn't quite put it together of like what she meant, but there's multiple times where Moira kind of implies that Peter has some side to him that we haven't seen when she's talking to Dwight. It happens like twice, where the first time is like just before he goes back to the train or whatever.
No, it's not Peter. It's the scientist.
It's not Peter.
Oh, it's the scientist.
Yeah, it's her cousin.
Right.
Yeah, because I don't know, he's a cousin-in-law or some shit. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What's that about? That doesn't really come of it. It doesn't come to anything, does it?
I was kind of assuming he was either like an alcoholic or he or bipolar or something like that, where he was just gonna fly off the handle at some point.
Yeah,
imagine Moira judging someone for being an alcoholic.
Listen, man.
Listen. That is what alcoholics do.
Yeah. It's called projection.
Yeah.
Also, I'm not sure if she's an alcoholic. Is she drinking all the time? Yes.
I did argue that. I don't think that she is either.
Is it a healthy relationship with the substance? I kind of think so. Is this an appropriate response to the situation she's in? Yeah. Like, tell me that tell me you wouldn't be stoned 24/7 during the apocalypse? I beg to differ.
Okay, just to point it out, she was, I don't remember what it was, but she was first drinking some alcohol that was like killing her, like rotting her stomach or whatever. And so she had to stop so it would stop killing her. And then she was like, I had to find something else to get me drunk. So I finally found this thing and now I drink this thing.
Well,
great relationship.
One of my notes in this just simply reads, this is going to be great because James is not going to know any of the alcohol in this book. And then my follow-up note is he's going to get these confused so often. It's going to be great. So yeah, she, Well, she's talking about gin. And first of all, she's not like she's wrong. It's just one of those things of like this is a back in the day type detail. Yeah, so she initially is drinking gin and she's just from gin to brandy. And you know what I realized when I was reading this? I don't think I've ever had a brandy in my entire life. Isn't that crazy?
Sure. I guess as much time as you spend in bars, that is kind of crazy.
That's what I mean. Like, if anyone on this show would have had a brandy, brandy's just like a liqueur based on wine, so it's like fortified wine, basically.
Ew. Okay, miss me with that.
Yeah, you would not like that. I reckon Beck would like it, but I think you'd hate it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say that your problem is that your pedestal that you have Guinness on is just way too high.
Listen.
So
It's not a pedestal.
Preventing you from living.
It's not a pedestal. It's a category of beverage. Okay. And I don't listen. Did I have a Guinness yesterday? Yes. Did I have a Guinness the day before that? Yeah. Am I gonna have a Guinness today? Probably. That's not the point. Okay. It's not that it's on a pedestal. It's that it's a category of its own. Anyway.
David and I and my friend had a Guinness last weekend as well, and it was delicious.
And
now I kind of low-key want another one.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. I'm like, do I go buy some Guinness? I was walking past the
It could have been a brandy.
Well, I was gonna say I'm gonna have to buy some brandy just to try it. I was walking past the grocery store on my way back from the gym this morning, and can I tell you I'd forgotten that you should never go outside on a weekend like this? The amount of people lining up to buy food, holy shit! I reckon the bottle shop's gonna be even worse.
Mm-hmm. Where Australians gone one whole day without alcohol.
Yeah.
Ah.
Alex texted me a meme last night that was like, what was it? It was, local atheist has bad Friday after forgetting God's weird bottle shop laws. Yeah, so a couple of other things that are probably worth noting on here, at like a structural level. So, yeah, Dwight comes down for the weekend. There's a really great moment where every time that Moira makes Dwight buy her a drink, it's like kind of a little argument. Dwight has this great reflection of that there's no longer any whiskey. And I've written down here, he says there's no longer any whiskey. Was James confused by the fact that he drinks whiskey later?
Jam did not pick up on that.
Because alcohol is like a foreign language to you. Can I tell you something that is crazy that's true? Do you know why this detail is accurate? Because I noted this down. I was like, that's weird. He has whiskey later. No, he doesn't. So when he says there's no longer any whiskey, he says whiskey with no E. So W-H-I-S-K-Y. And then later on, he's drinking whiskey with an E. Can either of you tell me the difference between whiskey with an E and whiskey without an E?
Yeah. It's whiskey. Yeah, whiskey is from the different.
Oh my God,
No,
that's
I
not how
don't-
you say it.
I thought you were being serious. I was
I
like,
thought you were
"Oh,
being serious."
This sounds not real.
Do you know the difference?
Nope.
And if either of you fuckers Google it, I will kill you. Because this is my fun trivia.
Jeez, all right.
Listen, this is the one piece of trivia that I get because I'm Scottish, and no one can take that away from me. So, do you know the reason? How has this not come up on the show before? Okay, so whiskey, Scottish whiskey. Whiskey comes from Scotland, right? Originally. And one of the things that happened between the Protestants and the Catholics is that when the Irish went to Scotland, there was this big, race war between the two types of the two sects of the church. It's why you get two sides of Glasgow, and that's where like the Rangers v Celtic kind of tension comes from. And the Scottish side maintained that the only legal definition of whiskey was Scottish whiskey, which was with a Y and no E. And what they did is they said, if you're from Ireland or the US, because they have an E in the names of the country, your whiskey has an E in it. So basically, any whiskey from anywhere around the world that isn't Ireland or the United States is whiskey with a Y, or strictly speaking, technically only from Scotland. But like they recognize Japanese whiskey as whiskey without an E, and Canada is whiskey without an E. That it was specifically to bully Ireland, basically, because they hate the Irish. So whiskey without an E is typically considered to be like nicer and more expensive and has more prestige. And then whiskey with an E is considered to be like less traditional and more working man. And like you get Jameson, which is like an Irish whiskey, obviously the biggest one. And yeah, it's a whole thing. And it's...
So he probably had his nice whiskey from Canada, and then when they went out, he had to do the American ones.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and then he starts doing Australian. He refuses to do Australian whiskey. So I think by the end, he's drinking maybe like... He's probably drinking, given the era, Canadian Club. I'd imagine like he's probably on the bourbons. Yeah. Anyway, that's like my one trivia thing that I have about being Scottish. So you're welcome. Yeah, there you go.
Oh, the other trivia thing that that you can have is that the name of that second submarine was the Swordfish. So you win that one as well.
Yes. So there was the Scorpion. Never wrong. Never catch me slipping.
Hate giving him wins.
I've circled, this is on page 35 of the EPUB. I've just circled this multiple times and written beneath it, Cairns mention, where he's like, oh, I might be right, it's south of Cairns. And I was like, man, this book, for your reference, JM, this book is like literally talking about where we live multiple times. Pat is from Cairns. Like, it's just, it's very rare for us to have this kind of representation in books. They're like talking through the geography of like Queensland. At one point they're going like, oh, has it hit Townsville yet? And in my notes I've just written, fuck Townsville.
Yeah.
Seems petty, but...
They point out the Atherton Tablelands as well. That's where Mitch is
yeah.
from. Well, I mean, sort of.
Sort of. Yeah, so it's very entertaining. I love the way that... I think you can really tell that like Shute is an immigrant to Australia, because so much of the way that he thinks about Australia is through this like logistical lens of the end of the world, as opposed to like the kind of phenomenological way that we talk about Australia. And yeah, the particular ways he imagines geography, I find very fun and unusual. Like we don't get a lot of... If we get Australian representation, it's like, it's Sydney. You know what I mean? We don't get Queensland so much. So it's fun.
Mm. Oh, and they mentioned Green Island as well, which is like that was, you know, if
Deep
you grew up
cut.
in Cairns, like that's like the place you go for a holiday, because it's like the only island. I mean, actually there's a few, but yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say that we over here don't have a proper scale of how big Australia is, because instinctively I was like, well, of course you guys recognize the stuff that's in the book because it's about Australia and you live in Australia. And then if I stop and think about it, I'm like, oh yeah, your entire landmass is like the size of our half of the world. Like it's so big, it's like incomprehensible.
Yeah. Biggest single continent country on the planet. Fun fact.
Well, the only one, surely.
That's well, this is where it gets confusing.
Is
because,
Antarctica a country?
No. And this is where it also gets confusing, because then it's like, but what about Tasmania? So I don't know how they square that circle.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, is Australia an archipelago?
Yeah, we're vestigial.
Yeah.
How do I communicate this? Yeah, where we live is not a place that people talk about when they talk about Australia, and especially northern Queensland is not somewhere that gets talked about ever. I'm like racking my brain. I'm like, maybe this is the dry set in New South Wales. I cannot remember. Maybe it doesn't say.
There was a popular like book that got adapted recently by Screen Queensland. It's set in Brisbane. It's like Boy Swallows Universe or something.
Fucking Trent Dalton, my mortal enemy. Yes, that's true.
Yeah,
true.
yeah. Forgot that.
My ongoing beef with Trent Dalton will never. It's not him specifically. I like his books just fine. It's what his success did to the Australian publishing industry that I resent, not him as a guy or him or his work. Anyway.
Yeah, but I can't really think of examples of Queensland representation in other media.
That's probably the biggest one. And there's a Chinese restaurant in Darra in that book that's also in the show that we literally used to go to when I was a kid. And when that showed up, that like I was like, I don't like this. It's too real. But yes, it is unusual. And I think that what we're going to see in the next part of the reading is there's a couple of like really fascinating like actual conversations that happen around the logistics, because essentially what's happening, I guess we haven't really said this out loud yet, is that there's been this nuclear warfare in, between, it's started allegedly by Russia and China. It seems to involve the petrol states and Israel and things like that. And the US, all of that stuff gets completely destroyed. And there's this kind of, the radiation is traveling on the kind of, on the wind, but because of the way that the equatorial divide works, that wind kind of, it's like transitioning those particles very slowly across the equator with the seasons. And this is kind of the season where it's finally transitioned across enough, that they're fucked. And they've got like maybe 9 months, to live. And the submarine is kind of being used to do like investigative work to figure out how quickly the radiation's moving, if there's anyone left alive, things like that. And at one point later on in the reading, someone is like, it's like one of the guys is talking about like, oh yeah, there's this guy who thinks that the radiation's getting less over time, and like maybe we can survive it. And the scientist who's related to Moira is like, that guy's a fucking idiot. Like, yeah, it's true, but like it's not going to make a difference. We're going to die anyway. And so a big part of the logistics of the conversations they're having are around how quickly is this stuff moving, who's being affected, do you think it's true it's already arrived at this place, things like that, which is how we get a lot of these locations dropped, I think.
Do y'all remember the name of the, they specifically named the nuclear bombs?
Well, there's a bunch of them, but they talk about the cobalt as one of the sources of the radiology. There's H bombs, so hydrogen bombs, and then it's specifically the cobalt that's caused this kind of worldwide radiation, I believe.
Yeah, because it's I don't know, it's designed to like make it spread on particulates or something like that, I guess. Yeah,
to maximize long-term radiation, making an area uninhabitable for significantly longer than a standard nuclear weapon.
Yeah, and the Chinese plan is crazy. So China's like super overpopulated at this point, and their plan is Russia's really big, and just after World War II, right, Russia is basically completely crippled, right? In the wake of like Stalingrad and the collapse of the Soviet, you kind of have this position that Russia finds themselves in where they have all of this empty land and half of the people that live in Russia are dead. And so China's plan is they're gonna strategically detonate a nuke on one coast of Russia, the coast that's farthest from China. And that'll be uninhabitable for 5 years. And what they're going to do, and then hope that the radiation doesn't come around the equatorial winds to the other side of China. And then what China's going to do is then hopefully just invade and then just move a bunch of people there and take over Russia after that 5-year period. Which is nuts. Like, this is the most... you can really feel the... And the terminology is also interesting, right? They don't say World War II or World War One. They go the First War, the Second War, right? It's that language hasn't developed yet because we haven't had that codified in the wake of like the 60s yet. And so some of that's just really fascinating, like artifacts of when this was written. But yeah, I thought that plan was like I don't know, man. Shute's really thought about this in a way that is very ghastly and is probably of a piece with the conversations that are happening behind closed doors at the moment in a way that, again, I had to kind of be like, I need to put this down for a minute, you know?
Mm. It reminds me of the in Mad Men when Draper's watching the presentation on the effects of nuclear fallout, like, you know, like realistic projections and stuff like that. And, you know, it's always about the thought that the enemy has put into total annihilation, right? Like the sort of the worst possible outcomes, and, you know, bred from paranoia that the other side will do that to you, kind of thing. And so, yeah, it's like the effects are always like the effect is to maximize the damage and the casualties and the like the long lasting, like permanent effects and stuff like that. It's just like absolute like harrowing worst case scenarios. Yeah, it's pretty scary stuff.
Yeah, and at one point, like, someone is they're talking about, I think it's later in the submarine, but like someone's like, yeah, like the problem was it got way too cheap to make this stuff. Someone at one point's like, yeah, you could basically make like a nuke for like 50 grand at one point. He's like, and so all these tiny petrol states get nukes, and that's part of the problem. And that is why, nuclear disarmament was such an important step in the kind of like, in the stabilization that occurred, you know, in the 60s through the 80s of like the world and you know, the state of the world. It's like, because it became so easy with the advances in like manufacturing and textiles. There's this notion, I think, and you obviously see this, you know, deployed and weaponized by Bush Jr. And deployed and weaponized at the moment, which is there's this supposition, to your point, Pat, that because we can think the fact that they might think to do something, that's now a threat. Like the second that you imagine that someone else can imagine something, you have to act on that as like a real and potential threat. And that's kind of how you get into this, like, you know, global paranoia. And it's part of the, you know, the ways that some of these people justify existing decisions they were going to make anyway, right? It's like, well, we wanted their oil, full stop, and now we have to work backwards and then start to invent these paranoid fantasies about reasons we can go and take it, or reasons, you know, like, and part of the really distressing thing about the conversations they have in this book is it's kind of implied that the whole war was started by accident. That like one side bombed the wrong people and then China retaliated and then it just escalated. You know, like it wasn't even really a conscious decision, kind of thing, which is scarily
I like how
realistic.
they pin it on Albania. It's
I know.
like of all countries.
Ugh, yeah.
Which at this point, I mean, is the USSR a thing in this world? Surely. Like, is Albania like part of the USSR? I don't know. That's an interesting thing to think
The
about.
USSR isn't codified till 53, so not when he's writing this, definitely not. And I feel like I'm not up to date. I used to be.
I was thinking as I was reading, you know, the theories on the geopolitics and stuff like that. I feel like it isn't meant to be that looked into. Like I got that feeling that, like, you know, Shute probably put a bit of thought into it, but he's like, not too much. Like,
no, but like Albania was still communist at the time, so I like, as was China and North Korea, so it kind of makes sense.
But yeah, thinking about the World War I parallels as well in that, in terms of chain reaction of events. You know, like what happened? It was like a Serbian nationalist in another country, I forget, Bosnia-Herzegovina, who shot the Austrian prince. You know, it's like, and then that got Russia involved, which got France involved, which got every other country involved. Like, yeah, it's like it's how the dominoes fall, literally. Yeah.
Yeah, and like that was all brewing because of the Balkans. So like, and this is the thing that I think is sometimes difficult to appreciate, because when it kicks off, it happens very quickly, right? Which is what we're about to see. But it's always set up like 20 or 30 years before that, and then it's just like bang, like something innocuous happens to push all the dominoes over. But the dominoes are set up slowly over time, and this does a good job of going, okay, yeah, like how would this happen? And the fact that it's Albania misunderstanding information from China, and then the Americans accidentally like nuke China because of that, like just too realistic in a way that I went. But there's some really good details though, like there's a conversation that Moira and Dwight have where he's explaining how all of this happens, like how the wind occurs. He explains like what the pressure equator is, and this was just things I genuinely learned that are like real. But yeah, in particular, like the way that none of the people in this book go, oh, it's this country's fault, right? Like there's an agreement that it's like a universal failure in some aspects. Like I think that's curious.
They heavily imply though that America is like the problem, because all of the American soldiers like are bursting into tears whenever they have to talk about it in the Australia town that they're in. But the whole thing was like y'all had said, it was like a false flag from one country that was flying a different country's planes, and then I think that's what caused America to then bomb the wrong country. And so I mean, like technically maybe they started it, but also they were retaliating against what someone else had started. And this sounds like I'm defending America's war tendencies, which I am not. Just to put that out there.
Yeah, but I guess the thing that I was trying to you've perfectly sort of articulated what I was trying to demonstrate, which is like the understanding this book has, and maybe it's just because like of Shute's proximity to the two wars, and then of course like Vietnam's right on the horizon, because of the way that the book thinks these things, they feel very material and inconsequential is not the right word, but there's like a quality to the way that that Shute writes these characters talking about these things that feels very modern and contemporary, where it's like, oh yeah, like there was a misunderstanding with this and misunderstanding with that. Obviously the internet changes how all of this would go now, but the sort of infosec aspect very much reminded me of the way that we still talk about wars and conflicts, where it's like, yeah, this country was, buying this resource from that country and flying, running this country's planes, and yeah, not much has changed, Yeah. All right, there was a passage.
Also, he's writing this before the Cuban Missile Crisis as well, which is like
correct.
Like that's a similar thing, was like a misunderstanding which almost sparked off a domino effect of nuclear bombs. So yeah.
Also caused by the US, coincidentally. So it is interesting that basically most of the minutes to midnight moments in history are caused by the American Empire. So that's something to think about, I think.
Yeah, that is interesting, isn't it?
I'm also obsessed with
they also invented that.
Yeah, that's kind of their thing. I'm obsessed with
like the minutes to midnight thing.
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
Ironic. Don't tell. Why would you tell on yourself like that? There's a thing that's been happening in a lot of the like socialist and communist magazines I read, where like over the last like 5 years, it's gone from like America to the American Empire in a way that feels very Star Wars. And I think it's accurate, first of all. And second of all, it demonstrates something this book does as well, which is in these moments of crisis, language evolves and changes. There's a quality to the conversations that happen in this book where people, they've gotten really good at talking around specific things. Multiple times, Moira thinks of certain topics as being like dangerous or difficult, or like things that you want to avoid and things like that. But one of those things that people don't avoid is the logistics of what's happening. People are very interested in when is this thing moving, who dropped what bomb. But what they don't talk about is like how much time they have left, or the people that are already dead, or things like that. And I think it's part of the intimacy between Moira and Dwight is that they talk very openly about quite a lot of that, and even to the point where later on she asks about his family, and that's when he explains this kind of delusion he has. But yeah, the passage that I was going to read before was this is the guys talking in the submarine, and John turns to him. What did the Chinese think about all this? Oh, they had another angle altogether. They didn't specifically want to kill Russians. What they wanted to do was to turn the Russians back into an agricultural people that wouldn't want Shanghai or any other port. The Chinese aimed to blanket the Russian industrial regions with a cobalt fallout, city by city, put there with their intercontinental rockets. What they wanted was to stop any Russian from using a machine tool for the next 10 years or so. They planned a limited fall, out of heavy particles not going very far around the world. They probably didn't plan to hit the city even, just to burst maybe 10 miles west of it and let the wind do the rest. With no Russian industry left, the Chinese could have walked in at any time they liked and occupied the safe parts of the country, any that they fancied. Then, as the radiation eased, they'd occupy the towns. And then at one point, John goes, no, it's not John. Dwight goes, as they're talking through this conversation about who did what, he's like, do you mean to say that we bombed Russia by mistake? It was so horrible a thought as to be incredible. Some of the writing in this is really excellent. It was so horrible a thought as to be incredible. Really, really pithy and concise. And then they start to think of the little countries as the irresponsibles with their nuclear arsenals.
Yeah, I thought that was funny.
Yeah, that was really... I like they're having a laugh about it. I was like, yeah, that is it's good.
Yeah.
One thing I just was thinking about as you were reading was I don't know if this was predictable looking back through history, but like the whole thing, the whole plan is predicated on China having such explosive populace growth that they need to expand, but their repopulation rate has been shrinking along with a lot of other countries over the past decade or whatever. So it's kind of interesting that the entire premise of the initial main problem in the book from the 50s or 60s doesn't exist now, or at least would not exist to the point where they would be like, hey, let's nuke our neighbors because we're kind of maybe need some more land, but also we don't, and our women need to have more kids.
Yeah, I mean, part of that is just like China was a different kind of regime back then, a different kind of dictatorship back then, and they hadn't yet come to that realization. And they start to get real. Like, China is like fundamentally a very scary country, and they start to do things like control how many children you can have, and it develops like spy networks and stuff. Like, it's very fashy in a way that like I think goes unremarked on a lot. And so yeah, but the part of, to your point, Jam, like part of the reason why that doesn't exist in China, for example, is they use those levers of control that they have to literally control like how many kids people were having for this exact reason. And overcrowding is still a big problem in China. But yes,
just as a fun tidbit, and I can't remember which country it was that I remember reading this study way back, but there was a study on some kind of like third world country, and they were looking at what the population rate does as the people become more educated and as a result become more not wealthy but become better off, and as education grows, population rate declines because you used to need like 10 kids because some of them might die in childbirth because you didn't have good doctors, and then you had to have a bunch of them to till the land and farm and everything. And as the population gets smarter and everything, you are able to have less kids because you don't need them like the older generations used to. So that's kind of interesting to think back at, the era that they were living in. Still physically, I mean, they weren't agrarian, but they still physically needed more people back then than people do now.
Yeah, well, and particularly in the wake of World War II, like, there's a lot of countries are trying to recover population rates for that exact reason.
And I think it's pretty sure it's right in the Mao movement as well. Like, China's failing themselves a bit at this point. They're all about, I can never remember that word about like taking land back that was once yours, but there's, that, they're a bit expansionist and a bit, a bit fashy as well.
Reclamation.
But, I mean, like
that sounds fun.
Yeah. I can't remember. There's like a big fancy word for it. Also, the thing about like needing more land for your people, like, bro, China, you've got like fucking hundreds of thousands of acres like to the east of you that you don't use. Why would you take the Urals in Siberia? Like that, surely that's more uninhabitable than the land you already have. But okay.
Yeah, I mean, something that frustrates the ever-loving shit out of me is the extent to which all these dictators will willingly use the word like socialism and communism when they mean free market Stalinism. And it's made conversations about this stuff so complicated because, especially like the generation above ours, when you say communism, they think of free market Stalinism, which is basically capitalism on steroids and has nothing to do with communism. And one of the ways that you see this kind of, you obviously had, Hitler was the National Socialist Party or whatever. There's a way in which the language that these dictators use also does a lot of mediation and, helps confuse what's all going on. So like, to your point, what, the reclamation thing, whatever there is a fancy word for it that I cannot remember. I remember Mao used to call it like the land verification something. But it's what America's doing, where they're basically pretending that something was theirs the whole time. And then using that as a pretense to invade another country. It's a particular aspect of fascism that comes from that project of empire. So and this book is obviously the end goal of that, which is if you do that enough, then there's no land for anyone. And you'll kill the world, There's a bit later in that conversation where they're still having this conversation about all the different, the different countries and whose fault it is and things like that. And what does he say? Yeah, Peter's talking about the fact that he like can't really imagine all of these places without any people in them. Like, and he's like, I can't believe that it's actually going to happen. Like, they all talk about the end of the world, but none of them quite believe that it's going to really happen, even though they know it is. And John laughs and he goes, it's not the end of the world at all. It's only the end of us. The world will go on just the same, only we shan't be in it. I dare say it will get along all right without us. Dwight Towers raised his head. I suppose that's right. There didn't seem to be much wrong with Cairns or Port Moresby either. He paused, thinking of the flowering trees that he had seen on the shore through the periscope. Cascaras and flame trees, the palms standing in the sunlight. Maybe we've been too silly to deserve a world like this, he said. The scientist said, that's absolutely and precisely right. And it's this sort of, this book feels in some ways like a kind of preemptive eulogy that all these characters are going through for life and the world they've been in. And that, like they're all realizing like as a species, we failed the world and maybe we didn't deserve it. And that perhaps this was always going to happen, This was kind of inevitable.
Oh man, what's that? the Great Filter. Do you guys know about that sci-fi concept?
No. What?
There's a great Kurzgesagt video on it, as there is about a lot of sci-fi concepts. But it basically, there's like three models or three theories as to why there isn't intelligent life that has tried to contact us, or it's a theory as to why intelligent life can't escape its own solar system, and it's because like one of the theories is that it always annihilates itself once a species becomes sophisticated and intelligent enough. And it's able to build weapons of mass destruction, and it always annihilates itself. And it's like a filter from it stopping it from being a spacefaring civilization or a species.
So kind of like a possible solution to like the Fermi paradox, basically.
What's the Fermi paradox again?
The Fermi paradox is basically like the paradox that like there's no evidence for extraterrestrial life, and there absolutely should be.
Right.
Like.
Yeah. Kind of. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Also, it's a great alternative ending saying. It's not the end of the world. It'll get on just fine without us.
Get on just fine without us. There you go.
Yeah.
I mean, it will. There's a there's a dog still in cans, which is also like. Just written down, why is there a dog in cans?
Yeah, what the dog doing?
What's that dog doing? And then I wrote down on the marginalia, they really got that dog in him, huh? Don't know what I meant by that. Think I thought that was funny at the time?
Yeah.
Absolute nonsense. Yeah. Not sure what I thought that joke was.
Good one.
Yeah.
Good one, past drunk David.
Thanks, past drunk.
I was about to say that was a second Guinness note right there.
Yeah. That was the whiskeys talking. There are some particulars that very much reminded me of like some parts of my childhood in this book where I think it's the second race where there's a section where so the kind of one of the things that is worth saying here that was in the summary is this book kind of follows Dwight and Peter as they go out on this submarine, and then they come back, and when they come back, Moira and Dwight kind of circle each other, potentially romantically. We're not really sure yet. And, Peter tries to spend the most amount of time he can with Mary and his new baby. And it's just all these people trying to figure out what to do with the time they have left. And they live, just outside of Coffs Harbour. And so, like, they, there's like a sailing club, and they go sailing on the beach. And, they spend afternoons on the beach. And there's one particular passage that I was like, oh, this is just like, this was me during Christmas when like we were down the coast. Like, they bathed in leisurely fashion in the evening sun. In bathing costumes, they unrigged the boat, put away the sails, and got her up to the resting place upon the dry sand of the beach. The sun dropped down to the horizon, and they changed into their clothes, took drinks from the hamper, and walked out to the jetty's end to see the sunset while Peter and Mary got busy with the supper. Sitting with him perched upon a rail, watching the rosy lights reflected in the calm sea, savoring the benching of the warm evening and the comfort of her drink. And I was like, damn. Neil Shute. He likes a beach. This guy's been to the beach in a real, but he's been to a Queensland beach in a real way. You know what I mean? This is an afternoon at like Sunshine Beach or Noosa or something,
There was a disturbing detail in there somewhere about them walking on the beach and then him putting socks on. I was like, the fuck?
Well, yeah,
no,
strange.
Miss me with that.
And then she absolutely drags him for the fact that all his shit has holes in it because you can't buy new clothes anymore.
Yeah.
That was too real. I was like, fuck me.
Well, yeah, I mean, let's be real. The blokes wouldn't be buying new clothes anyway.
It's true. Yeah, details like that. I was like, this is getting uncomfortably real now. But yeah, and then later on, as they're walking back, in the warm, rosy glow of the sunset, there was still beauty in the world. Yeah, to this eulogic quality of this book, I think. Some of that description. We talked a lot about the prose in The Road being very challenging, and I think this book is a really good comparison point where it's very simple prose. It's very legible. To your point as well, Pat, a lot of the dialogue I can absolutely hear in an Australian accent. At one point, someone says "butte." I was like, Jesus, that's the most Queensland thing ever. Oh, that's a butte, mate. I'm like, fucking hell. Something I've literally never said in my entire life. I was like, ugh, a vibe. But yeah, I'm curious.
It's interesting you mentioned because you just mentioned the road. One thing that kept going through my mind is we had talked about like the most poignant passage in there to me was the one the day providential to itself, and that kept, while reading this, that kept going over and over in my mind. They're sitting out there on the beach, they're just having a good time, and a nuclear fallout is coming towards them, and just the day's providential to itself. And it was, I kept flashing back to that line.
Yeah, carpe then diems, right? It's really a book about what is life if not a series of days that you try and like make meaning from. And I love the I love the little details in this of the time where like they throw that party, and there's a point at like 11:30 where Mary brings out like coffee and scones, which is apparently the universal Australian sign that a party is over. Was not aware of that. Did not know.
Yeah, I was like, I'll take that at face value.
Yeah, sure.
So you know that just means you leave all your parties too early. So you've never
clearly
seen that.
I didn't know. I didn't know that I was supposed to signal that it was over. But yeah, the
Yeah, David, at every party, David's just been there overstaying his welcome while eating scones.
yeah, just wolfing them down.
Oh, these are great.
These are great.
More, please. Yeah.
Knocking back another scotch. Give me some more scones. Can I tell you though, I feel like getting a scone right is very hard. You know what I mean? Because I've never encountered a scone that wasn't either... Because if you get them fresh out the oven, you get some cream, some jam. Oh, but that's never how you're getting them. They're always like a little bit stale, a little bit dry, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm just not a scone guy.
I wonder, are scones the same thing in the States?
I think scones are...
What do you imagine when?
Yeah, what are you imagining when we say scone? Oh, sorry, scone in the mother tongue.
Yeah, I was about scones. I've had them before. A family member enjoys making them, and many people find them very delicious, and they can have them.
Is this... Now, I was going to guess that you didn't like them because because the scone is quite savory. You know what I mean? Like, it's quite a savory thing, and you're kind of a sweets guy.
I was going to say it's just like it's just a dry, tasteless bread is how I would describe it. So I don't know if I've had a good one.
Maybe you just need to have, because I had a scone. We had scones when we were in the UK, and that's a different beast entirely. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're doing it different over there. And it's something to do with, like, the milk and the butter. I don't know, man. And, like, you know, like, how, like, the chocolate, like, English chocolate is, like, 1,000 times better than Australian chocolate. And, like, New Zealand chocolate is, like, 1,000 times better than Australian chocolate. And it's just all to do with, like, the climate and the water and stuff like that. Very much the same with scones, I think. So maybe we need to go to the UK. Actually, maybe going to Europe is a bad idea at the moment. At some point, we need to go to the UK and try UK scones. You know what I mean? That's a Patreon bonus. The boys go and have real scones.
Yeah, I'm down for that.
Yeah, because they are different. As are pastries, obviously in the UK, very different vibe of how they're doing pastries. Much more savory, much less sweet.
I love that we switched up from we're having a physical meeting to do a special bonus episode where Pat and I played Smash Brothers, and now it's we're going out to eat scones together.
Well, The thing about the Smash Brothers one is that's kind of manageable. Like we could meet in Singapore and do that. That's not the most expensive thing ever. Scones, how like fly. I was thinking about this. I was like, what? How would I get to the UK now, given the state of the world? Because you wouldn't want to go. I guess you could go Singapore and then Heathrow, but I reckon you'd want to go Perth and then Heathrow, maybe. Go the other direction. Anyway, bad time to be flying, regardless. It's not important.
It's also hilarious that you're like a good cook and you're like, no, we got to go somewhere else to get a good way. I can't make it myself.
Well, well, first of all, that's baking. That's not cooking. I can't bake for shit, as Pat well knows. I bake like
your Daredevil cookies were great, man.
it's the one baking recipe I have. Yeah, I'm not a good baker. I tell you what though, Beck can bake. Those fucking sugar cookies were amazing at Christmas. Oh my god.
Yeah, she's a great baker.
Yeah. I got like super stoned one night and ate like 4. It was great. The like little cat ones were so cute. Little cat faces.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Pat's also a great cook. That's the other thing you should know, JM, is Pat's also like an excellent cook. So it's a DNA
good.
of the show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, I'm just avoiding talking about the book because it keeps making me sad. There's a little mystery that's set up here, which is there seems to be what's the deal with these radio signals from Seattle?
Yeah. Well, I kind of feel like the book is going to go in a bit of a hopeful direction. That's what I'm thinking.
Okay. I hope that ends up being
As
the
in
case.
Yeah. Maybe oh man, what's that? Harry Belafonte is the one who's making those signals, you know? Maybe it's all connected to the that movie.
I was thinking about that film a lot when I was reading this. As like a visual reference of like how these people are dressing and things like that. And particularly interesting to read in opposition to that film, because one thing I did note is that blackness isn't anywhere in this book, like at all, in any capacity.
No, there's a steward on the sub who brings them like a meal or something like that. Because it specifically like said that like the black steward or however whatever his position was. Does that ring a bell?
No. You could be right, but I more meant like culturally, not literally. I mean, literally, yes, but I mean, if that's true, then yeah, they're okay. But which is just curious. Very all the time. Yeah, it's particularly interested in that. And every character we meet is, I think, a second or third gen immigrant. So at one point you get, I want to say it's Moira's dad explaining that like, or it's his mom or something, that like his grandfather migrated, but they weren't convicts or whatever. Which is exactly what you'd say if they were convicts, to be fair. So. And yeah, like we get some really cool details of like, the conversation. So that conversation we were talking about before of like, oh, like who caused the war and what'll happen and stuff. That kind of incites the scientist. Is John the scientist? John Osborne? Yeah. That incites John Osborne because he's with the CSIRO, which is still an institution that we have to this day. As is obviously the RAF and the Navy and stuff like that. And he's explaining that like the coolest detail in this book is he's writing a history of like what all has happened, like a current history. And they do it on glass bricks. They etch it on the glass and then they fuse another brick down on top of it in some way. So the writing's in the middle. What are they going to do with them? Dwight asks. Put them on top of Mount Kosciuszko. It's the highest peak in Australia. If ever the world gets inhabited again, they must go there sometimes, and it's not so high as to be inaccessible.
I like that how they also include a little deciphering index.
Yeah,
They
his how to
picture a
read.
cat with CAT.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he's like, maybe it should be fish. And she's like, wait, that's getting too complicated.
It's like as a Rosetta Stone, it could use a bit of work. But
Mhm.
I did learn recently because, just one of the shower thoughts that popped into my head. I was like, does glass decompose? And it doesn't. It's an immortal material.
Yeah.
So, and it's quite sturdy if you're stacking like layers of glass on top of each other. So as I was reading that, I was like, oh man, that's clever. It's a good idea.
I thought it
Given
did.
that
And
it
it was
won't
just like
be crushed by the mountain.
It's not like 1,000 years or something. I thought it did.
No.
Just forever?
Huh.
Yeah, well, it's like millions of years. Like, yeah.
I mean, that makes sense. It's made from sand, and sand is basically indestructible.
Hmm.
Right? I guess it's a crystal.
But the reason why it's not like a dangerous pollutant. I mean, all waste is, just fucking polluting the earth, but like it's because it gets rounded off when it goes into the ocean. So, you're not left with and I guess, just on regular ground as well, gets smoothed over. So you're not left with a bunch of sharp fucking little glass things everywhere on Earth. Yeah.
That is fascinating.
But yeah, if it's in a concealed environment, then yeah, it lasts forever.
Oh, is that why like tools from like the Stone Age or whatever still exist? Because they're all made from like obsidian glass and stuff. Because they sharpen glass. That's why
possibly.
it like survived. That's
Yeah.
I've literally never thought about that. That's crazy. Because yeah, like, and then it's like
Yeah.
bowls and vases and
yeah.
bottles and stuff. They all survived.
Well, yeah. Ceramics survive a long time as well. I didn't ever consider that obsidian is.
Oh, it's volcanic
glass?
glass. Yeah.
What is Yeah. Huh. Yeah. That would be why.
Yeah. Huh.
There you go.
You learn something new every day.
But also, those are like 10,000 years max kind of thing. Like glass literally survives for millions of years, apparently. Yeah.
Huh. Okay. Interesting. Sorry, now I'm just looking at facts about glass. Cool. Okay. Yeah. All right. Good to know. So yeah, very cool. And also, I just thought it was a really clever, the most sci-fi detail in this book so far, I feel.
Well, it's also not that sci-fi because I remember this is probably like 10 years ago that there was like research being done on a new format for how hard drives could be made for computers and stuff. And like they were looking at making glass drives because if you can figure out how to etch that stuff, etch the information onto glass, then like you're talking about, it'll never decompose and if it's not exposed to the elements, it won't wear down or anything like that. So you'll just have permanent storage that won't degrade.
Yeah.
I don't know where that's gone in the past decade.
Kind of nowhere. So like there's been a big arms race between quantum computing and photon computing, and I believe it was quantum computing that was trying to use glass. I can't remember why it didn't. I think there was a conduction issue or something. My point though is that I was gonna this is sci-fi for like 1950 though. You know what I mean? Like. When is Planet of the Apes? When does the first one come out? Because I'm wondering how much of a precursor this book is to a lot of this stuff. Original film series.
Well, Don Draper watches it with his son
Yeah.
in like season 3.
68.
So I want to say
It's the first one.
60. Oh,
Yeah.
it's quite late.
Well, yeah, you got to remember, like, that's his kid's old enough to watch it, so that's got to be toward the end of the
that's
series,
true.
like his youngest.
And I remember it's Bobby actor number 4 or something. So
It's
yeah,
Bobby
it was
acted
quite
on
late.
before, and he gets, and it's so upsetting that he can't sleep, and Betty gives Don shit for it, and I'm like, God, that's the most petty divorced energy of all time. So good. I love Don sitting there being like, well, that was potent, and his kid just freaking out. God, that man's good. That man's good, actually. Hot take. Yeah, Planet of the Apes original, 1968. So this is like early in like the post-apocalypse lineage.
Okay, so I was just checking the production schedule to make sure that I wasn't spoiling something.
Hmm.
Oh, wait, no, am I? I am. Okay, never mind. I'll shut up.
Okay. Okay.
Future project.
Okay. Like, what is he talking about? All right, never mind. Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, we haven't announced that yet. So Well, the Flesh and the Devil is 1959. So this book is like really the tip of the spear as far as like popular media talking about the end of the world, really. Although, when is After London? This is me forgetting everything I've been working on for my thesis. After London. So After London's 1885, which is like the first progenitor of the genre. And then H.G. Wells had The Purple Cloud, which sometimes gets referred to as The Last Man, which is then confused by M.P. Shields' book. It's very confusing. But I think that in a lot of ways, this book is one of the first post-apocalypse novels that is like dealing with contemporary issues of the day when it's written, right? Like if you think about The World, the Flesh, and the Devil, it's abstracted enough from its current moment. Despite the fact that we know it's nuclear war, that's not a geopolitical film, if you know what I mean. Like it's a film about individuals that represent geopolitics, whereas, and then there's obviously the Bible stuff. Whereas this is like, it's taking the contemporary politics of the moment it's written in and going, if all of this went wrong, how would it go wrong? And who would be responsible and things like that, which I do think is a unique quality that kind of sets and establishes a part of the collapse novel, a part of the collapse story that we see, you know, through the genre to this day. Trying to think, there was a film that you were talking about, JM, that was recent. I think it was a comedy. It was about the end of the world, and it was like very much using a contemporary setting. I don't remember what it was. It was a comet or something.
Don't Look Up.
Don't Look. Yeah, that might have been.
There's
it.
a comedy. Don't Look Up.
Yeah. That's like of a lineage with where this stuff starts in on the beach. So, you know, quite seminal in a lot of ways. There is also something else that I find kind of interesting in the argument that Dwight and Moira have, where Moira is she's frustrated with the situation where she's like, it's not fair that the world's going to end and she didn't get to have this life. And Dwight keeps trying to placate her. And part of the reason why he's able to, or why he has his perspective is that in some ways, Dwight kind of had a life that he lived. I realize he's still young, you know, in a lot of ways, but, you know, he had the wife, he had the kids. Moira hasn't really had the opportunity to really start her life yet. And every time he pushes back against her indignation, it always feels unreasonable because it feels like her position is very, very reasonable to me. You know, I don't know. Like, yeah, how do we feel about Moira and her frustration with Dwight?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think she's legitimately quite depressed about it, right? Which is why she's drinking so much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. I think she is completely valid perspective. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, when she's talking about like listing off all the places that she's never going to get to see, like that hit me kind of hard actually, and then whoever it was that was like, it was probably when they were out on the sub and looking through the periscope, and they were like, you know, that might be the last time that a human lays eyes on that ever in history, which also hit me pretty hard.
Yeah, that in particular is rough.
But what's also interesting about what you're talking about is I don't think this was done intentionally. I just think that this is part of the stigma that men and women have of the different ways of communicating, because this is something that Deborah Tannen talks about in like what's the name of the book? It's like what you heard is not what I meant, or something like that. And Like in this instance, Moira is looking for like compassion and understanding, and he's trying to solve her problem.
Right.
Like the male is addressing the issue in a completely different way than it's not the conversation that she's having at all, and so that's the conflict. But it's also very much like you said. I didn't pick up on it at when I was reading that he has already had a family. He's already had the kids, and she is saying, I'm never going to have kids. There's not time for me to have kids.
She can't even
So
like get
it
a
is-
job. She doesn't have time. You know, like
Yeah.
yeah. It's just so
But
sad.
which also that part I also think is very much an era thing, because like now very few people want to work. You want to do your hobbies. You want to do the things you enjoy, right? But so many people in this time are like in the book, they're like, I want to work, and like Mary says, oh, it's been so long since you were since you had whatever they call it, a deployment or whatever they call it. And it's like they're acting like that's the biggest thing, and it mentions that Mary was like a military daughter, so she knows like what it's like to be a family member of someone in the service. And all of that is more important than only having 6 months left with your husband before the world ends. Like, so much of it only makes sense in that context
See, I completely
versus modern context.
I completely disagree. I think that's part of the point of the book is like it like it's like double think, where it's like, well, it gives you something to do so you're not just sitting around waiting. I don't know, man. I know what you're saying. I think that to me is like an insufficient explanation of the types of conversations they're having, and the reason that they're arguing about this is, she says multiple times to Dwight, like, at least you have something to do. Like, she's not saying I want to work because I want to work. She's saying I want to work because it would be something that I have to do. Do you know what I mean? And I don't disagree. Yeah.
I think that's different from him, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yes.
Is it still feels like he is in the mindset of I have to work to be a provider for my family. It feels to me, and I don't even know if there's anything in the text that can support that, but that's what it feels like to me, is that he is stuck in that I have to be the man who's working, and I'm not out there working, so I feel like I'm not fulfilling myself. And she is just looking for something to do, and it's not the work that matters in the same way that it does to him. But I'm very much reading that through the cultural context of that time.
Well, he even says at one point, like, when he accepts the initial posting, he's like, Mary would want me to do it for my career. So he's thinking about it as a career, whereas she's thinking about it as work. And it's like, I read that and I went, would she? And it turns out yes. Like,
Well, I mean, yeah, it's very obviously like a flimsy justification for what they're doing. But also, like, but there is a twinge of practicality about it, because he is still getting paid technically, and it looks like people are still trading with money and stuff like that for goods and services. So, like, yeah, it's ultimately it's the money part is like, it's insubstantial. But it's more about using that as a jumping off point to, convince yourself of like, oh, I need to be doing something. I need to be, living my life. And yeah.
The double-edged aspect to that, though, is that this work is in some ways the only work that is still worth doing, right? Like you get that detail, like the office is closing and stuff like that, and like everything else slowly winding down. But these guys are actively investigating the radiation, and there's some talks of like, oh, if we can get this data, we might be able to prove that like we might survive this. Like, I don't like it's tricky because it is technically the only work that matters anymore in some ways.
But they don't know that. They have no idea why they're being deployed. They're just doing what they're told to do.
That's actually a good point. Yeah, there's so many layers here of like that make it frustrating to kind of put a full picture together. I think that's why the book works so well for me. Is there's never a clear answer on a lot of this. Yeah. So then I guess the next bit I had, or the last bit I wanted to touch on, is, yeah, the conversation that Peter has with the pharmacist, which is so just, yeah. He describes the symptoms, which is basically like, it's like a combination of like cholera and leukemia. It sounds really, really unpleasant. And he goes, "You've got some stuff for it, haven't you? Not to cure it, I'm afraid." And then he goes, "About a week before it reaches any district, details will be given on the wireless. After that, we may distribute it to those who ask for it. There must be terrible complications over the religious side. I suppose then it's a matter for the individual." And yeah, basically the pharmacist says, "I'll explain it to my wife. That's fine." And he kind of takes him in there, and he gives him a little plastic vial that has 2 white tablets in it. That he swaps. He's giving them these so that Peter can go and explain what's going to happen to his wife, in case he's not back in time, because they're going for what could be a 6-month deployment, which might mean that he's not back before the end of the world. And then for infants and children and people that can't take pills, it's, and this was the grim bit, the baby or a pet animal, a dog or a cat, it's a little more complicated. And then there's basically a hypodermic injection. And yeah, he goes, "Will there be anything to pay?" And then the chemist says, "No charge. They're on the free list." I was like, Jesus. So that's kind of the situation we find ourselves in, is 6 months-ish left, maybe 9, if like on the outside. And yeah, Peter's going to be gone for like most of that to go visit Seattle. There's an implication that they're also investigating that phenomena of like the radiation maybe getting better. I had trouble following some of the logistics of all of that.
Yeah, me too. But yeah, that's what I got. They'll go and investigate Seattle because there's a radio signal from there, and then at the same time seeing if the radiation levels decrease further north you go. Yeah.
I had been wondering about how cold and altitude affected the radiation, because you had mentioned being on top of a mountain, and then I was also wondering if you went to the poles. Granted, survival is harsh, but people live there now in research stations and stuff, so it can be done.
Well, radioactive particles are quite heavy, so it's more about it's less about whether like the radiation is stronger or not, and it's more about whether whatever medium carries the radioactive particles, or whatever particles become radioactive, whether it can get to that height, if that makes sense. So it's less about the temperature and it's more about the elevation.
Is that the whole time I've been wondering if several long lost tribes living up in the mountains around the world, like they're going to survive all of this, and eventually they evolve enough that they come down out of the mountains and they find this whole decaying world, all of these cities and everything. Fantastic story idea in it, on its own.
Yeah. It's one of the qualities I think that I like about the way that they talk about a lot of this stuff is, to your point, Pat, like it's very confusing even to them as they're accepting these orders, and part of that is maybe a product of previously a tactic in the military from an infosec perspective, which is info security for those who don't know. Information security is a lot about like obscurity and disseminating detail among irrelevant detail in order to like obscure the important bits. And it kind of feels like they're still doing that in some of these briefings, even though there's no one left to like overhear that information. Like there's at one point where Dwight has to actively overcome the fact that like some information that is proprietary to the military, he can just tell Moira because there's no enemies anymore. Like, I really love that detail. I wouldn't have thought of that if I was writing this. I think that's really, really sharp writing to put in a detail like that.
Yeah, I like how the whole, like, you know, this is the highest level of institution in the entire world right now. And it's just like a couple of guys passing notes to each other.
Yeah, it's like 10 guys in a room,
Yeah.
and the Prime Minister who can't be in Canberra anymore because the logistics don't make sense. So he's in fucking Melbourne. Yeah. I also wrote in my notes next to the Prime Minister conversation, does JM know what a Prime Minister does?
Mostly piss off Doctor Who.
Very good, ladies and gentlemen. Joke of the day. Of course you do, because of Doctor Who. Okay. I legitimately was like, he may not know what this means. I would say it's our version of a president, but that's not right.
The Prime Minister, they have a made up Prime Minister, don't they?
Yeah.
This book?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was probably faux pas to like put a real person in here. I would imagine. Yeah. Okay, well, hey, that's everything I've got. You guys have anything else? Okay. Well, that's everything we read for today. Next time we got a bit of a shorter reading. We are just reading chapters 5 through 7. The stopping point is page 211 in the vintage Shute version. But yeah, so 5 through to the end of chapter 7. The reason I've separated it like this is there's a lot of logistics and details in this next section, and then we really get the emotional climax of the book. So I tried to keep those separate so we can have some, you know, kind of contained conversations in that regard. So yeah, if you're reading along, definitely jump in, read through those next sections. And apparently there's also a really good audiobook somewhere. I couldn't find it myself. But someone was saying to me at the pub yesterday that, like, yeah, there's a really, really good copy of an audiobook of this circulating somewhere, if you're an audiobook person. I couldn't find it, but apparently it's out there. So there you go.
Lost audiobook media.
Well, a lot of these old books, you know, it's always someone doing it like open source for free or whatever. Like all the audiobooks that I've listened to for like all of the, like, you know, Marxist and communist text and stuff, it's just some guy who like recorded an audiobook and put it on YouTube or whatever. Which is fun.
Yeah.
Cool. That'll do it. If you'd like to support us, you can head to patreon.com/zeroindent. Supporting us at the $5 tier unlocks the bonus episodes of this show where we watch and talk about supplementary materials. The latest episode is up right now where we talk about the Road film adaptation. It's a really fun episode. We get onto some tangents. I make JM watch the Harry Potter trailer. We all have a good time. It's very fun. Free Patreon subscribers gain access to the Zero Indent Patreon chat where you can send us questions and ideas for future episodes directly, or you can just DM me on Patreon. Any support you can give us helps us keep making thoughtful, independent media criticism an important practice to preserve in an age where context is defined by algorithms. We appreciate all of our Patreon subscribers who help us continue to make the shows and articles that shape Zero Indent. Just a bit of a plug from my end. I was a guest on With Wonderful this week. That episode probably won't come out for another fortnight, but if you do want to go catch that, YouTube Weird but Weird but Wonderful, and me and James, related to that, have kind of relaunched our really old show Hat Boys, where every Wednesday night at 5 p.m. AEST we are playing through Red Dead Redemption 2 and just doing a bunch of dumb shit. In our first episode, we tried to punch a bear to death. Spoilers. We did not succeed. And you can catch the VODs of that on Wednesday morning. So yeah, that's on YouTube at Zero Indent, as with everything else we do. So a bit more fun, bit less academic. And yeah, we've had a bunch of people asking us to bring back Hat Boys, so we thought we'd acquiesced. That's everything I've got. it's just the end of the show. It's not the end of the world. Except it kind of is beginning to feel like this might.
might be.
Yeah.
Let this be an archival record of this date.
Yeah, like honestly, it's really tough out there, guys. I hope you're all staying safe. And yeah, look after each other because it's going to be a really challenging time ahead of us. So we'll be here and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time. Zero Indent is an independent publication dedicated to studying works of genre fiction, brought to you by our subscribers. Head to patreon.com/zeroindent to learn more and consider supporting us. Our theme song is The Swan by Alon Peretz. Our podcast cover art is by Crystal Hatay. Everything else is written, directed, and edited by me, DC McNeil. You can find our merch and books at underink.press and everything we do at zeroindent.com.
This does
What?
not bode well. My brain forgot how to sync up my eyes and my hands.
Oh, dude. I recorded something with James yesterday and literally both of us clapped wrong and we were like we both clapped and we went, fuck that up.
That does make me feel better. Thank you.